It had been a long week. Every day felt like the same numb blur, a slow crawl of routine and obligations. Work was draining, the same meetings, the same people, and yet nothing seemed to get done. I would come home each evening, make a quick dinner, watch a little TV to unwind, and then fall into bed, only to repeat it all the next day. The problem wasn't the schedule, though. It was her. Tara. At first, I didn't notice how much I was changing, how much I was adjusting myself to fit her needs. I think that's how it always starts, right? Little things you brush off, little compromises you make, thinking they're insignificant. But they add up. So many little things, in fact, that eventually it feels like you're walking around in someone else's shoes. Tara was the kind of person who made everything about herself. The center of her world was her drama, and I was just another character in it. She'd always been a bit manipulative, never outright, but enough to make you question your own sanity sometimes. A sly comment here, a strategically timed emotional outburst there, and before you knew it, you were second-guessing your every move. I remember when we first met. She was charming, confident, everything I thought I wanted. We clicked right away. I liked her energy, her sharp wit, the way she would throw herself into conversations with a passion that felt contagious. But now, months later, it was different. That initial spark had faded, replaced by a low hum of tension that neither of us acknowledged directly, but we both felt it. Her behavior had gotten more erratic recently. There were the lies, subtle at first, little things she'd claim that didn't quite add up. Then there were the bigger ones, the stories she would weave, and I'd catch her in contradictions. But even when I confronted her, she would shrug it off, turning the tables and making me feel like I was overreacting. "Why are you so obsessed with the details, Mike?" she would say, her tone dismissive, as if I was just being petty. "Because the details matter, Tara," I'd reply, trying to remain calm, but frustration gnawing at me. I knew something was off. My gut was telling me that things weren't adding up, but I couldn't prove anything. And every time I tried to push further, Tara would deflect, make me feel guilty for even bringing it up. It was like playing chess, only she was always 3 moves ahead. One night, after an especially draining week, I came home to find her sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. Tara was always a little dramatic when she was upset. She had that actress quality where she could turn on the tears with ease. But tonight something felt different. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being manipulated, but a part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to think that maybe this time it was real. Maybe this time, she was telling the truth. "Mike, I don't know what to do anymore," she said between sobs. "I feel like I'm losing everything, and I don't know how to fix it." I sat down beside her, my chest tight. Her vulnerability was so convincing. She had a way of making me feel like the world was crumbling, and it was all my fault. "What happened?" I asked, trying to stay composed, though I could feel my patience fraying at the edges. "It's just, everything is falling apart. You don't understand. I feel like no one is on my side anymore," she continued, her voice rising, starting to build that familiar emotional storm. "You don't even care about me. I'm all alone in this." I took a deep breath, forcing my mind to stay clear. This was one of those moments where I had to be careful. Tara's emotional outbursts were often calculated, but the timing was always perfect. She knew exactly how to make me question myself. "I care," I said, trying to sound reassuring, but the words felt hollow in my mouth. Did I care anymore? Or was I just conditioned to play this role in her life? I wasn't sure. I looked at her, trying to find the girl I had fallen in love with, but she was hidden behind the mess of lies, the drama, the emotional manipulation. I had been blind for so long, but now I was starting to see things more clearly. Tara's behavior wasn't just the result of stress or a bad week. This was something deeper, something that had been brewing for a long time, and I was just now beginning to realize how deep the problem ran. But in the moment, all I could do was offer comfort. I wrapped my arm around her, telling myself it was the right thing to do, even though a part of me knew it wasn't. Tara leaned into me, her tears soaking my shirt, and for a brief moment, I almost believed her. Almost. Maybe we should take a break," I said, my voice soft, uncertain. The thought had been rattling in my mind for a while now, but I hadn't wanted to say it out loud. What if that was the answer? What if it was the only way to clear the air, to figure out who we were without all the baggage? Tara immediately tensed up. Her body stiffened against mine, and I could feel the shift in her energy, the change from vulnerability to anger. "A break," she snapped, her voice cold. "You want a break? After everything I've done for you, you want a break?" Her eyes were wild now, no longer the sad, pleading eyes of a woman in distress, but the eyes of someone who had been cornered and was ready to fight. I recoiled slightly, surprised by her reaction, but I should have seen it coming. This wasn't a woman who could tolerate rejection, not even in its mildest form. She wasn't going to let me walk away without a fight. "I just think," I started, but she cut me off, standing up abruptly and pacing around the room. Her voice was getting louder. "You think what? That it's that simple?" Tara spat. "That you can just walk away when things get tough? Maybe I'm the one who needs a break from you, Mike. Maybe you're the problem, not me." I opened my mouth to respond, but I couldn't find the words. The truth was, she had already made up her mind. She wasn't going to listen to reason. She wasn't going to accept responsibility for anything. Instead, I sat there, the weight of her anger pressing down on me, and realized something. This wasn't just about a relationship anymore. It wasn't about her or me. It was about control. Tara needed to control the narrative, to dictate how things played out, and if I didn't play along, I became the enemy. For the first time, I felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't going to work, not in the way it had been. But at the same time, I had no idea how to break free. The next few days were a blur, a whirlwind of tension and silence. Tara and I barely spoke after that night. I could feel the walls going up between us, brick by brick. Every time I tried to approach her, to talk things out, she would shut me down with that same cold look. Her eyes were empty, like she was hiding something behind them. I was beginning to realize I wasn't just losing her. I was losing myself in the process. Work became my escape. It was easier to dive into a project or lose myself in the endless meetings and deadlines than to deal with the chaos at home. But even at the office, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I would get these texts from Tara, just short, cryptic ones that made my stomach twist in knots. "We need to talk when you get home." That was all. It would hang in the air like an unsolved riddle. But every time I came home, there was no talk. There was only her, sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, pretending nothing was wrong. It was the silence that was killing me, the absence of words, of anything real. And yet, the tension between us was palpable, thick like smoke in a room you can't clear. It was hard to know what to do. I wanted to confront her, to tell her how I was feeling. But the fear of her shutting me down, of her twisting everything I said, kept me quiet. Every time I opened my mouth, I wondered if I'd be walking straight into a trap. Finally, one evening, after what felt like the longest week of my life, I couldn't take it anymore. I came home, and there she was again, sitting on the couch, her back to me, staring at the TV. This time, I couldn't hold it in. I walked up to her, stood in front of the TV, and crossed my arms. "Tara, we need to talk. Right now," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. She glanced at me briefly, then back at the screen. "I'm not in the mood, Mike." "I don't care. This can't keep going. I'm not going to sit here pretending everything is fine when it's clearly not." My heart was pounding in my chest, but I refused to back down. Tara finally turned to face me, her eyes narrowing, lips curling into that all-too-familiar smug expression. "And what exactly is not fine, Mike?" Her tone was like a challenge, a dare, daring me to confront her head-on. "You know what's not fine," I shot back, feeling a surge of anger. "This game you're playing. The lies, the manipulation. The way you twist everything I say so I end up feeling like I'm the one at fault. I'm done with it. I don't want to be a part of this anymore." She blinked, taken aback for just a moment, but quickly recovered. "Oh, so now I'm the villain in your story? Is that it?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I see. So, you can't handle the pressure, and instead of owning up to your part in this, you blame me. Typical." It hit me then. She wasn't going to admit anything. She wasn't going to take responsibility for the way things were falling apart. It was always someone else's fault, always mine. And in that moment, I realized something crucial. Tara wasn't just using manipulation to get what she wanted. She was doing it because she genuinely couldn't see the problem in herself. "I'm not blaming you for everything, Tara," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But this isn't working. And if you keep shutting me out, if you keep pushing me away, then yeah, I'm going to blame you. I'm not going to keep pretending everything's fine when it's not." She stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. I couldn't tell if she was angry, hurt, or just indifferent. But then her eyes softened, and she let out a long sigh. "You really think it's that easy, huh?" she said, her voice quieter now, almost sad. "You think you can just walk away, leave all of this behind, and life will be better?" I stared back at her. "I'm not saying I'm walking away. I just want something real. Something that isn't built on lies or games." Tara shook her head slowly, her lips curling into a bitter smile. "You think you want that, but you'll never get it. It's too late for that, Mike." Her words hit me like a punch. It was like she knew exactly how to strike me where it hurt the most. I wanted to scream, to fight back, to tell her she was wrong. But all I could do was stare at her, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through, everything I had tried to ignore. The truth was, I was tired. Tired of being manipulated, tired of walking on eggshells, tired of this emotional roller coaster that never seemed to end. But a part of me still held on to the hope that things could change. That if I could just get through to her, if I could just make her see reason, maybe we could fix this. "Why can't we just be honest with each other?" I asked, the words coming out quieter than I meant. Tara's eyes flickered with something. Whether it was guilt or annoyance, I couldn't tell. But before I could say anything else, she stood up abruptly, walking toward the door. "I think we both know the answer to that, Mike," she said, her voice low, almost like a whisper. "Because honesty doesn't work when both of us are lying to ourselves." And with that, she was gone. The door slammed behind her, leaving me standing there, the silence hanging in the air like a fog I couldn't clear. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the door, hoping she would come back and say something, anything, but she didn't. I had the overwhelming sense that I had just made a mistake, that I had let something valuable slip through my fingers without realizing it. But deep down, there was this cold, uncomfortable feeling in my chest that told me I was better off this way. That maybe, just maybe, letting her go was the only thing that could save me from losing myself completely. But what if she came back? What if I didn't walk away soon enough? What if I wasn't strong enough to resist? These questions spun around in my head, a whirlwind of doubt and regret. The longer I stood there, the more the reality of it all settled in. Tara wasn't just a woman I was in a relationship with. She was a force of nature, a hurricane that swept through everything in her path, leaving destruction behind. And I was left standing, trying to figure out if I was better off in the storm, or if I should walk away before I lost everything. I spent the next few days in a haze, unsure of where my life was headed or what I was supposed to do next. Tara hadn't come back, and despite the relief that came from the silence in the house, there was also a constant gnawing feeling of unease. It was like the calm before a storm, and I wasn't sure if I was preparing for a disaster or if I was finally starting to breathe. I tried to distract myself, work, gym, TV, but nothing felt right. It was almost like I couldn't escape the weight of everything that had happened between us. And even though she was gone, it felt like her presence was still everywhere. The smell of her perfume lingered on the sheets. Her favorite mug sat on the counter, a little chipped from years of use. Every little thing seemed to remind me of her, of the life we had, and it made me question whether I had done the right thing by pushing her away. But then I thought about the conversation, about the way she had looked at me when she walked out the door, and I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. It was over, right? She wasn't coming back, and I wasn't sure I even wanted her to. But as the days passed, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said before she left, because honesty doesn't work when both of us are lying to ourselves. I couldn't get those words out of my head. What did she mean by that? What had I lied to myself about? And what about her? It felt like she was trying to twist the truth, trying to make me feel like I was the one who had been dishonest, when all I'd done was try to be open and vulnerable. I needed answers, and for the first time in ages, I realized I wasn't afraid to get them. I decided to call her. I wasn't sure what to say, but the silence between us felt unbearable. Maybe we could at least talk, maybe even clear the air. I dialed her number, and after a few rings, her voice came through. "Mike," she said, flat and emotionless. "Hey," I replied, my voice rough. "Can we talk?" She sighed, a sound of resignation that made my chest tighten. "You want to talk now? After everything?" "I think we both need to. We can't keep going like this. I need to know what happened, why everything changed." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost feel her weighing whether or not to respond, whether she even cared enough to explain herself. But finally, she spoke again, quieter this time. "What do you want to know, Mike?" "Everything. The truth. What happened to us? What did I miss?" I couldn't hold back the frustration anymore, the ache of being in the dark for so long. I had to hear her side, even if it meant facing things I wasn't ready to. "I don't even know where to start," she muttered. "Start anywhere. Just tell me what's going on in your head." There was another long pause before she finally spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if I can keep pretending that everything is okay, that I'm okay. I've been lying to myself, Mike. But I've been lying to you, too." My heart skipped a beat. This was the first real honesty I'd heard from her in weeks. "What do you mean, lying to me?" "I've been running from myself," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I don't even know who I am anymore, Mike. I don't know what I want. I keep pushing you away because I'm scared. I've been scared of being seen, of being vulnerable. And when I'm like this, I manipulate things. I don't even mean to, but I do." I stood frozen, absorbing her words like a punch in the gut. This wasn't the Tara I knew, or at least, it wasn't the Tara I had built in my head. The Tara I thought I knew was confident, sure of herself, never vulnerable. But now she was admitting she had been hiding. Hiding from herself, hiding from me. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I asked, the question coming out before I could stop it. "Why did you let me believe you were fine? Let me believe it was all my fault?" "Because I didn't know how to tell you," she admitted. "I didn't know how to make you understand that I'm not perfect, that I'm broken in some ways. I thought if I kept up the charade, kept pretending, maybe it would all go away." I exhaled slowly, trying to process her words. There was a part of me that wanted to be angry, to tell her how much pain her silence had caused me. But I couldn't. I understood. I had been too caught up in my own feelings to see how much she had been struggling. "I wish you would have just talked to me," I said quietly. "We could have worked through this together." "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry." For a moment, neither of us said anything. I wasn't sure what to feel anymore. I had spent so long angry, frustrated, and confused that now, hearing the raw truth from her, I didn't know if I should be relieved, sad, or just exhausted. "I don't know where we go from here, Tara," I said after a long silence. "But I'm not going to pretend everything is okay. I can't do that anymore." "I don't want to pretend either," she replied, her voice barely audible. "But I don't know if I can fix this, Mike. I don't even know if we can fix this." "Maybe we don't have to fix everything," I said, my voice shaky. "Maybe we just need to start over. With honesty. With the truth." Tara didn't respond at first, but when she did, her voice sounded almost hopeful, in a way I hadn't heard from her in months. "I want that, Mike. I really do. But I don't know if we can undo everything we've done to each other." "I don't know either," I admitted. "But maybe we can try. For both of us." We sat in silence for a long time after that, both of us caught between the possibility of something better and the fear of what might come next. The truth was, I wasn't sure where this was going, or if we could ever rebuild what we had. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we might have a chance. A real chance. Maybe that's all we needed, just a chance to be honest, with each other, and with ourselves. But it wasn't going to be easy. And whatever happened, I knew we couldn't just pick up where we left off. We were both different people now, and this time, we'd have to build something new from the wreckage. The following weeks felt like a slow, agonizing crawl. I didn't expect everything to fall into place overnight, but I also didn't expect it to feel like we were both still stuck in the same loop. Tara and I tried to communicate more, but it was awkward. Every conversation felt like a delicate negotiation, like we were both walking on eggshells, afraid that even the slightest misstep would break everything. She'd come over a few times, and we'd sit together, but the air between us was still heavy, and every attempt at fixing things felt like we were only delaying the inevitable. I had to admit, though, I wasn't the same person I was before all this happened. Something had changed in me, something deep and unsettling. I wasn't as quick to ignore my feelings anymore. I had been forced to face the truth about myself, about how much I'd allowed Tara's actions to dictate my own, how much I'd compromised my own happiness because I didn't want to face what was really happening between us. In a way, I was still angry, angry at the lies, angry at her manipulation, but also angry at myself. How had I let it go on for so long? Tara, on the other hand, seemed distant. She wasn't the same either. I could see it in her eyes. Her usual sharpness was gone. She was lost, unsure of what she wanted, or who she even was anymore. And as much as I tried to be patient with her, it felt like we were both just waiting for the other to make a move, to make a decision about where we stood. One evening, she called me. "Mike," she said, her voice soft. "Can we talk? I think it's time we finally talk about everything." I agreed immediately, relieved to finally feel like we were both ready to have that conversation. She came over an hour later, her face drawn, her eyes tired. The usual tension in the air was even more palpable now, and I could tell she had something on her mind. "I've been thinking," she started, sitting down across from me on the couch. She fiddled with her hands, avoiding my gaze. "About us. About everything." "Yeah." I leaned forward, my own heart racing. "What about us?" "I don't know what we're doing anymore," she said. "I feel like we're both stuck in this space where we're trying to make something work that's already broken. I've tried to figure out how to fix it, but maybe we can't fix it." The words hit me like a punch in the gut, and I had to swallow hard before responding. "So that's it? You're just giving up?" "No," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "I'm not giving up. I don't want to give up. But I don't know if we can go back to what we were, Mike. I don't think we can just pretend everything is okay anymore. We're not the same people." I let out a slow breath, processing her words. For so long, I had wanted some resolution, some clear answer, but now that I was hearing it, I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. "I don't think we can go back either," I said quietly, "but I don't think I want to give up either. Not without trying." She looked at me then, her expression unreadable. There was something almost empty in her eyes, and I couldn't tell if it was because she was just exhausted from everything that had happened, or if it was something deeper. "I don't know if we can keep pretending, Mike," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know if I'm capable of loving you the way you need me to. I don't know if I even know how to love you anymore." I felt my stomach drop at her words. It was like hearing the final nail being driven into the coffin of our relationship. The one thing I had been hoping for, some form of clarity, had come, and it was more brutal than I had imagined. She didn't love me the way I needed her to, and maybe she never had. All the signs were there. All the subtle manipulations, the lies, the emotional distance, but I hadn't wanted to see them. "I don't know if I can love you the way you need me to either," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I think we're both broken, Tara. Maybe we're just not meant to be together anymore." It hurt to say it out loud, but there was an undeniable truth to it. We had tried, at least in our own ways, but it felt like we were clinging to something that had died a long time ago. We couldn't keep forcing ourselves to fit into a mold that no longer suited us. Tara wiped her eyes and stood up, her shoulders slumped in exhaustion. "I don't want this to be the end, Mike," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't want to lose you, but I can't keep pretending either. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay." I stood up too, walking over to her slowly. I know. I don't want to lose you either. But maybe this is what we need. Maybe we both need to let go." She looked at me, the pain in her eyes clear. I could see it in the way her lips trembled and the way her hands fidgeted, like she was on the edge of something big, but too afraid to take the leap. "I don't want to be the person who hurts you," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." "You didn't," I replied. "You didn't, Tara. You were just lost. We both were." She took a deep breath, nodding slowly. "I think I need time. I need time to figure things out, Mike. For myself. And maybe we'll be okay in the end. But right now, I don't think we can be okay together." I didn't know what to say. It felt like we were finally admitting to each other what we had been avoiding for months. The truth was harsh, but it was also freeing in a way. We weren't right for each other. Not anymore. Not in the way we had been. But that didn't mean it was over for good. It didn't mean we wouldn't ever find our way back to each other, even if it wasn't as lovers. "I think you're right," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was still raw. "We need time, and maybe we'll figure things out. But we have to stop pretending." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I reached out and gently cupped her face, wiping the tears away with my thumb. For a moment, I almost wished I could promise her everything would be fine, that we could go back to the way things were before. But I couldn't. I couldn't lie to her anymore, and I couldn't lie to myself either. "You're right," I whispered. "We have to stop pretending." With that, she turned and left the apartment, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was alone. Alone, but oddly relieved. I didn't know where this was going, but I knew I couldn't keep chasing something that was already slipping through my fingers. Whatever happened next, it was time to face the truth, and maybe that was the first step toward real healing. The days after Tara left were like a fog that refused to lift. I spent most of that first week-in-a-daze, moving through life like I was watching everything from the outside. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Relief, anger, sadness, confusion. It was all tangled up in my head, a storm I couldn't quite sort through. The apartment was quiet, eerily so. It used to be filled with her voice, the sound of her moving around, doing little things like picking through the kitchen for snacks or singing along to whatever was on the radio. Now it was just empty. I went back to work, but even that felt like a blur. I tried to engage with my coworkers, tried to keep some kind of normalcy, but I couldn't shake the thoughts of Tara. I kept asking myself what went wrong, over and over again. Was it me? Was it her? Or was it both of us, unable to change, stuck in the mess we'd created? It was hard not to think about all the years we'd spent together, how everything had once felt so easy, so right. But now it felt like I was looking at an entirely different person when I thought about her. Tara had changed in ways I couldn't even begin to understand, and I, too, was different. More cautious, more wary, more aware of my own faults. A week passed, then two, and Tara hadn't called. I knew I needed to make sense of everything, but I was too scared to reach out. What if it just made things worse? What if she didn't want to talk to me anymore? The truth was, I wasn't sure what I wanted, either. The thought of reaching out made my chest tighten, but at the same time, I missed her. I missed the Tara I used to know, the one who used to laugh with me late at night, who knew exactly what I needed without me having to say a word. But that wasn't her anymore, and that wasn't me anymore, either. The longer I let the silence linger, the more I felt like we were both drifting further away, maybe forever. Then, 3 weeks after our conversation, I got a text from Tara. "Mike, can we meet up? I need to talk." It was simple, direct. No explanation, no build-up, just that. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity, my fingers hovering over the screen. I didn't want to read too much into it. Maybe she just needed closure. Maybe she wanted to apologize. Maybe she didn't want anything to do with me at all anymore. But I couldn't ignore it. I agreed to meet her the next day, at a small cafe near the edge of town, a place we used to go to when we first started dating. The thought of it made me feel nostalgic, but also a little sick to my stomach. What would she say? What did I even want to say? When I arrived, I spotted Tara almost immediately. She was sitting at a table near the window, staring out into the street. She looked thinner, tired, but there was something different about her, something more resigned. I walked over and sat across from her, and for a moment, we just stared at each other in silence. "I wasn't sure if you'd show up," she said quietly, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. I didn't know if I should, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't know what this was about. She nodded slowly. I get it. I don't blame you for not reaching out. I know I hurt you, Mike. I know I did a lot of things that don't make sense, things that hurt both of us. I don't know where to start. The words were hard for me to hear, but at the same time, I was glad she was being honest. That was something we hadn't done in a while, be honest with each other. Not really. I don't know where to start either, I admitted. I've spent the past few weeks trying to make sense of everything, and I don't know if I've gotten anywhere. But I'm listening. She took a deep breath, as if bracing herself, and finally looked up at me. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying for a long time, and it hit me then. This wasn't just about us. This was about her, too. She was struggling, and I'd been so focused on my own pain that I hadn't stopped to think about what was going on inside of her. I've been thinking a lot about us, she said, about how we ended up here. And I don't want to excuse the things I've done, but I realize now that a lot of it was me trying to avoid facing myself. I don't think I've ever really dealt with my own shit, Mike. My insecurities, my fears. I projected all of that onto you, and I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say at first. The old Tara, the one I used to know, never would have been so open, so vulnerable. It felt like she was apologizing for the person she had been, the person who had hurt me so much. But I could see that it was more than just an apology. It was like she was acknowledging the deep-rooted issues inside of her, the things she had never allowed herself to confront before. I don't think I ever really saw that side of you, I said, my voice softening. I saw the things you did, the lies, the manipulations, but I never stopped to ask why. Maybe I was too angry, too focused on what you did to me, to notice that you were struggling too. She nodded again, her eyes wet with tears. I don't expect you to forgive me, Mike. I don't expect you to forget. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. The weight of her words hung in the air, and for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of something. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was just a fleeting moment of clarity, but it was enough to make me want to listen, to try and understand. I hadn't been able to see her as anything other than the person who had hurt me for so long. But sitting here now, hearing her speak, I realized that we were both just human. We both made mistakes. We both had things to work through, but that didn't mean we were beyond fixing. I don't know what comes next, I said, my voice cracking a little, but I know that I can't keep living in the past. I can't keep holding on to all this anger and hurt. It's not doing either of us any good. Tara's eyes softened, and she reached across the table, taking my hand. I don't know what comes next either, but I want to try. I don't know if we can fix everything, but maybe we can try to be better for each other. Maybe we can figure this out. Together. I squeezed her hand gently, unsure of what that even meant. Maybe we would figure it out. Maybe we wouldn't. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was seeing her for who she really was, and maybe, just maybe, I could stop holding on to all the resentment that had been building up between us. We both had a long way to go, but this was a start, and that, in itself, felt like progress. A week passed, and things between Tara and I felt fragile. We started talking more, not just about what happened, but about what we wanted, what we were afraid of, and where we were both going wrong. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was different, real. I'd finally stopped walking around with all this weight on my chest, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I wasn't second-guessing every word, every move. There was a shift in the air, like we were both fighting to save what we could from the wreckage of our past. Then, one afternoon, the call came. I was at work when Tara texted me. We need to talk tonight. I'll be at the old park, the one near your parents' house. The message was short and cold, like a punch to the gut, and immediately I felt my heart race. What was going on? Was she about to drop a bombshell? Was this her way of ending it again? I called her, but she didn't pick up. My mind started running through every possible scenario, none of them good. I had no idea what I was walking into. By the time I got to the park, the sun was starting to set. The quiet surroundings felt ominous, the rustling of the trees too loud in the silence between us. I saw Tara sitting on the old swing set, staring into the distance. When she saw me, She didn't stand up, didn't even smile. Her face was pale, her eyes red, like she'd been crying. "Hey," I said, taking a few steps closer. She didn't answer right away, but after a long pause, she motioned for me to sit next to her. My stomach twisted, but I sat down. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice low, "about everything we've been talking about. About how I screwed up, how I hurt you, how I hurt us." She looked at me, and I saw the same vulnerability in her eyes, the same person who had sat across from me in that cafe, trying to make sense of it all. "I didn't just mess up with you, Mike," she continued, her voice shaking. "I messed up with myself." My chest tightened. I had no idea where this was going. But before I could say anything, Tara stood up, her hands shaking as she pulled something from her bag. A letter. It was folded neatly, edges creased as if she had been holding onto it for days, maybe even longer. "Do you remember when we first met? You asked me what I was afraid of," she asked, her eyes locking with mine. I nodded slowly, unsure of where this was going. "I think you knew me better than I knew myself," she said, looking down at the letter in her hands. "I was afraid of losing something, but I never realized that what I was really afraid of was losing me." She took a deep breath. "Mike, I'm leaving." My heart stopped. "What? Leaving? Where?" "I can't keep living like this. I can't keep being the person I've been, and I can't keep holding you back, either. I'm going to take some time to figure myself out, away from everything, away from you, from all the mistakes I've been making. Maybe this is a permanent thing. I don't know, but I can't pretend that I'm not broken, and I don't think I can fix myself here." Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't process them. She was leaving again. But this time, it wasn't about us. She was leaving for herself, to figure things out, to try and heal. And as much as it hurt, part of me knew this was something she had to do. Maybe it wasn't even about fixing our relationship at this point. It was about fixing herself. Tara looked at me, eyes searching mine like she was looking for something. "I know this isn't what we imagined, but I need this, Mike. For me." I stood up, my mind spinning. My heart told me to stop her, to hold on to her. But the part of me that had grown in the last few months, the part that had learned to listen, to understand, knew this was something she had to do alone. It was what she needed, even if it was the hardest thing for me to accept. "I don't know what's going to happen next," I said, my voice raw. "But if this is what you need, then I can't stop you. You're right. You need to fix yourself before anything can ever be fixed between us. I want you to be okay." Tara nodded, a small, sad smile on her lips. "I'll be okay. I don't know how long it'll take, but I will be okay." We stood there in silence for a moment, both of us caught between the past and the future. Neither of us knew what was coming, but for the first time, I felt like I was at peace with the decision. The relationship had been broken, but we hadn't. Not yet. Tara took a deep breath, turned, and walked away. I watched her go, feeling a strange kind of calm settle over me. I didn't feel angry, or bitter, or even sad. I just felt tired. Tired of the games, tired of the lies, tired of the back and forth. But I also felt something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe it was because we had both come to realize that healing wasn't just about fixing the broken parts of us. It was about giving ourselves the space to grow. And that, maybe, was the most important part of all. As Tara disappeared into the distance, I didn't chase her. I didn't try to stop her. I just stood there, knowing that sometimes the hardest part isn't walking away. It's knowing when to let go.